goes digital. Explore a world of options. Top stories, live updates.
It's 7:30 in the evening across India. I am Tanvi Taneja. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll bring you the day's big stories from across India and the world. My colleague William Denslow is joining me from New York today. William, good to see you.
Well, good morning, Tanvi. It is 9 a.m. here in New York and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. And it is a pleasure to be joining you too. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. The US has provided Ukraine with another round of military assistance, but there's still deadlock in Washington over the delivery of continued aid. And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has met Mexico's president in an effort to address the flow of migrants crossing the US southern border. But first, the headlines.
Death sentences of 8 Indians commuted by a Qatari court in the Dahra global case. Detailed judgment is awaited. India and Russia signed protocol on consultations for the next 4 years. Russian President Vladimir Putin invites Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Russia.
We will be glad to see our friend Mr. Prime Minister Modi in Russia. We will be able to discuss all current issues and talk about the prospects for the development of Russian-Indian relations.
US allies reluctant on Red Sea alliance. EU signals support, but Italy and Spain appear to distance themselves from the task force. And Mexico hails unspecified deals with the United States on migration and trade. President Andrés Manuel López Obrador says both sides agreed to keep border crossings and rail crossings open. So it was the Court of Appeal of Qatar that today commuted the death sentence of 8 Indians in the Dahra global case. While the detailed judgment is awaited, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs said that it was in touch with the family and legal team on the matter. On to Russia now. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Wednesday, after which India and Russia signed a protocol on consultations for the period of next 4 years to make progress in economic cooperation, energy, trade, connectivity, military technical cooperation and people-to-people exchanges. The protocol was signed during External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar's 5-day official visit to Russia.
With an aim to take the Russia-India partnership to new heights, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Wednesday. During the meeting, President Putin invited India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Russia, saying it will give both countries an opportunity to discuss all current issues and also explore the scope of future bilateral ties.
We will be glad to see our friend Mr. Prime Minister Modi in Russia. We will be able to discuss all current issues and talk about the prospects for the development of Russian-Indian relations. We have a lot of work to do, so I ask you to convey to him my best wishes and please pass on our invitation. We are waiting for him in Russia.
As soon as the meeting began, the Russian president highlighted Prime Minister Narendra Modi's willingness to do his best to resolve the Ukraine crisis peacefully.
We know the position of Prime Minister Modi and we have spoken about this more than once. His position regarding his attitude towards complex processes, including flashpoint areas and the situation in Ukraine.
In his remarks, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar conveyed the warm greetings of Prime Minister Modi and handed over a personal message to President Putin.
First of all, please allow me to convey the personal greetings of Prime Minister Modi. He has also, through me, sent a letter to you, a letter expressing his thoughts about the state of our cooperation and the progress that we have made in recent days, and I will have the honor to give you the letter. Certainly, Mr. President, he looks forward to visiting Russia next year.
External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, who is on a 5-day visit to Russia, also had a comprehensive and a productive meeting with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, on Wednesday. As strategic partners, discussions were also held on international situations and contemporary issues, including defense partnerships. With Anita Raj, Amit Mukherjee for DD India.
On to the Russia-Ukraine conflict now. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov blamed the West for global conflict, stressing that the West's effort to inflict a geopolitical defeat on Russia has completely failed. My colleague William Denslow is in New York and he gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. William, 2 years into this conflict, still no end in sight.
Tanvi, that's absolutely right. Fighting continues to rage on. Thursday is day 673 of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Thousands have died and millions displaced. But the fighting rages on. Both Russian and Ukrainian armies continue to exchange fire, with each claiming to have hit the other's military targets.
With each claiming hitting the other's military targets. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported in a briefing that its forces have repelled multiple attacks by the Ukrainian army, destroying Ukrainian artillery systems and armored vehicles. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Air Force carried out airstrikes on Russian soldiers and equipment, and its rocket forces hit Russian ammunition depots and a command post. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said on Thursday that Russia is determined to achieve its objectives in its military operations in Ukraine, and the West's effort to inflict a geopolitical defeat on Russia has completely failed.
We are getting ready for all of the goals that have been set to be implemented. The demilitarization and the denazification. We cannot avoid it. We are actively working with the developing countries, especially in the context of that the West is really changing its tactics, maybe even thinking of clarification of strategy, because if the strategy was the strategic defeat of Russia, then this strategy has completely failed. It is now clear to everyone.
Nearly 2 years into Russia-Ukraine war, Moscow controls about 17.5% of Ukrainian territory, and a Ukrainian counteroffensive this year has failed to win any major territorial gains against Russian forces. Rahul Upadhyay's report, DD India.
The US government on Wednesday released $250 million in military assistance for Ukraine. The final aid package of 2023 includes air defence munitions, ammunition for high-mobility artillery, rocket systems, and more than 15 million rounds of small ammunition. It's the last tranche of aid that the White House can provide without further approval from Congress, where Republicans have been blocking new assistance. Congress has approved more than $110 billion for Ukraine since the beginning of the war with Russia, but none has passed since the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives. And in a year-end interview, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has blamed the West for turmoil around the world. Speaking to Russian news agency TASS, Lavrov said the outbreak of conflict between Israel and Hamas is a result of long-standing failures of US foreign policy. The Russian foreign minister also said a cycle of violence needed to be broken in the Middle East, calling acts of terror and collective punishment unacceptable.
As the result of this hybrid war of all the collective West against Russia that was started against us with the hands, bodies and other components of the Ukrainian society using the most advanced Western armaments, as the result of this, Russia this year has become considerably stronger and the unity of our people has increased considerably.
Mexican and US officials have agreed to keep border crossings open, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said on Thursday. This comes after several key rail crossings were temporarily shut due to high numbers of migrants arriving at the country's shared border. On Wednesday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met Mexico's president in the Mexican capital to discuss the migration crisis at the US-Mexican border. Blinken said that the US is committed to working with Mexico on migration and drug challenges. New York City's Mayor Eric Adams on Wednesday announced an executive order requiring charter bus companies carrying migrants to give 32 hours notice before arriving in the city. The announcement came during a press conference with the mayors of Chicago and Denver, who demanded more federal support for the influx of migrants into their cities. Adams said if any buses were found in violation of the rules, could be impounded and the bus companies charged with a misdemeanor.
I'm announcing an executive order requiring charter buses transporting migrants, those often contracted by the state of Texas, to provide 32-hour notice in advance of their arrival into New York City. To make sure we have sufficient staffing, we are also requiring that these charter buses arrive only between 8:30 a.m. and 12 p.m. Monday through Friday, and to only drop off passengers at one spot unless directed otherwise by New York City Emergency Management.
Former US President Donald Trump has secured his place on the Michigan state ballot for the 2024 presidential primary. On Wednesday, the Michigan Supreme Court blocked an appeal over a lower court's ruling that Donald Trump should be permitted to run for president in the state. This ruling is in contrast with that of the Colorado Supreme Court, which earlier this month decided to remove Trump from its state primary ballot for engaging in insurrection. Republicans in Colorado have appealed to the US Supreme Court over the ruling. Moving on, Israel is expanding its ground offensive in Gaza after issuing a warning that the war with Hamas will last for months. Heavy fighting is also continuing in the southern city of Khan Yunis. Israeli military spokesperson Daniel Hagari said troops were working around al-Bareji and Khan Yunis, which it describes was a terrorist base for Hamas.
In the south, we are working in several areas of Gaza. One is called Al-Burej. It is an area in the central refugee camps. We are on the third day of attack there, and we are killing many terrorists and destroying terror infrastructure. The second is Khan Yunis in the southern strip, a central terror base of Hamas. There we have expanded our activity, and today we have added another brigade, and we are continuing to act there with the use of new military tactics above the ground and underneath.
Amidst the ongoing conflict, fighting between the Israeli army and Hezbollah is also intensifying. On Thursday, Israel claimed to have shot down a drone that crossed into its territory from Lebanon. While air raid sirens were sounding in northern Israel, no immediate casualties were reported. Earlier, the IDF released videos of top military commanders conducting assessments and approving plans for its northern command. The videos also show airstrikes on Hezbollah targets along the Israeli-Lebanon border. A week after the US launched a maritime force to respond to Houthi attacks in the Red Sea, many partners are distancing themselves from the effort. President Joe Biden intended to establish a firm international response to attacks on ships that have been affecting global shipping. Italy's navy said it would send a ship to the region, but not as part of the US operation. France says its ships will also remain under its command. The Pentagon calls the force a defensive coalition of more than 20 nations. Since the attacks began, several shipping companies have rerouted cargo to a longer journey around Africa. And that's it from me here in New York. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you so much, William. William Denslow joining us from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global. Still to come on the show. China accuses Taiwan of deliberately hyping up a military threat from Beijing for electoral gains ahead of polls. And Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi unveils its first electric car, announces plans to become the top automaker.
A new COVID-19 variant, GN.1, is spreading fast around the world. I connect the dots. Every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
In 2023, the world faced unprecedented climate challenges, yet positive strides were made. Join us as we unravel the significant environmental milestones globally and in India. From climate action to conservation efforts, what happened in 2023? Let's find out. At these times, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. China has accused Taiwan of deliberately hyping up a military threat from Beijing for electoral gains ahead of elections on the island in January. Chinese Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian said that Taiwan's government was to blame for the tensions.
The Democratic Progressive Party authorities deliberately hyped up the so-called military threat from the mainland and exaggerated the tense atmosphere, all for the purpose of seeking electoral benefits.
Meanwhile, Taiwan on Thursday reported Chinese fighter jets flying over the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan's presidential and parliamentary polls on January 13th are expected to shape the island's relations with Beijing. Still with China, the country has said that it will not turn a blind eye to repeated provocations and harassment by the Philippines as tensions rise between the two countries over tensions in the South China Sea. China's Defense Ministry spokesperson Wu Qian said that China's Coast Guard has taken various enforcement measures on the same. He also called the accusations made by the Philippines purely false hype and said that the Philippines insisted on sending vessels to intrude into waters. Earlier this month, the Philippines had accused China of repeatedly firing water cannons at its resupply boats. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Philippines Foreign Affairs Secretary Enrique Manalo discussed the ongoing tensions between China and the Philippines. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, in response to potential provocations from North Korea, visited a frontline military unit on Thursday and called for an immediate and decisive response. During the visit, President Yoon urged troops to swiftly neutralize any provocation. Earlier, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un directed the country's military to expedite preparations for war in light of the perceived confrontational actions by the United States. And now we take a look at what else is happening around the world. Emergency services worked to clear damage caused by Storm Gerrit on Thursday after strong winds battered parts of the United Kingdom. Several houses suffered heavy damage, particularly to their roofs. Elsewhere, the storm brought heavy rain and travel disruption. Budapest grapples with an unprecedented surge in winter floods this December as the Danube River surpasses its banks, achieving a 10-year peak at 6.93 meters. Although significant damage is avoided, specialists caution more frequent floods attributing to the impacts of climate change can occur. Over 42,000 people lost their lives in gun violence and shooting incidents in the United States in the year 2023, as per latest data released on their national website. US ranks first in the world in terms of both individual gun ownership and cases of mass shooting incidents. An investigation is underway into the suspected killings of 4 men on a Del Monte pineapple farm near Nairobi in Kenya. The investigation comes a month after a media report said that security guards on the same farm had been killed and they assaulted, they assaulted trespassing villagers and killed them. And Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi unveiled its first electric vehicle and announced that it was aiming to become one of the world's top 5 automakers. The price of these electric vehicles is yet to be announced. Back in India, Ministry of Commerce Industry, Piyush Goyal on Thursday unveiled an e-commerce exports handbook for medium, micro and small enterprises designed to function as a comprehensive resource for aspiring entrepreneurs seeking to engage in export activities through the e-commerce avenues. With a strong digital infrastructure and supportive policies, India is well placed to tap into the global market. In alignment with this prospect, India's Foreign Trade Policy 2023 explicitly aims to bolster cross-border e-commerce exports.
E-commerce exports handbook for MSMEs, which will be a one-stop shop giving the what, where, when and how to promote exports through e-commerce. This was part of our Foreign Trade Policy 2023 ambitious target to increase merchandise exports to $1 trillion by 2030.
On to India's cultural outreach program of bringing the ties of North and South India closer, the Kashi Tamil Sangamam. As the second edition of this Sangamam is underway in the North Indian city of Varanasi, the 6th batch of Kashi Tamil Sangamam attendees arrived in Varanasi. The group visited Kashi Vishwanath temple and offered prayers to Lord Vishwanath or Lord Shiva. DD India's Mihir Mekuri gets us more.
The 6th batch of the Kashi Tamil Sangamam reached the North Indian city of Varanasi to take part in the 2nd edition of the event. The group was greeted with flowers at Kashi's Sri Kashi Vishwanath temple.
Kashi Tamil Sangam 2.0. The way they treated us is wonderful. And from Chennai, we came here for the past travel of 2 days. The food they have given us wonderful, and all the arrangements made by the government was amazing.
Each member was honoured with an Anga Vastram or a traditional stall at the Shankaracharya Chowk.
हमारे जितने भी वहाँ से अतिथि लोग आए हुए हैं, जब वो विश्वनाथ धाम के द्वार में आते हैं, तो उनके फूलों के द्वारा, वृष्टि के द्वारा, फूल के जो है, फूलों के द्वारा उनका भव्य स्वागत। उसके बाद अंदर प्रवेश के पश्चात बाबा विश्वनाथ जी का दर्शन, सभी के हाथ में गंगा जल दिया जाता है, जिसके द्वारा वो भगवान विश्वनाथ जी का अभिषेक करते हैं। इसके पश्चात जो हमारा विश्वनाथ धाम का शंकराचार्य चौक है, हमारे जितने भी अतिथि वहाँ से आ रहे हैं, वहाँ पर बैठ के उनको तमिल भाषा में जो हमारा काशी की विशेषता है, विश्वनाथ जी की विशेषता है, माँ गंगा की विशेषता है, पूर्व में हमारा जो विश्वनाथ देवालय कैसा था और वर्तमान में कैसा है, इसका पूरा विवरण तमिल भाषा में हम देते हैं यहाँ।
In Varanasi, as part of the ongoing program of Kashi Tamil Sangamam 2.0, stalls showcasing various products from Tamil Nadu in South India have also been set up. The main aim of the Kashi Tamil Sangamam is to bring the cultural traditions of the North and South India closer, to enhance the understanding of the country's shared heritage and to strengthen the relationships between the people of these regions. With the inauguration of the Kashi Vishwanath Dham and the Kashi Tamil Sangamam, a large number of tourists are arriving in Kashi, which is also providing employment opportunities to the locals. Mihir Makhuri's report, DD India.
India's outreach campaign, Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra, is being undertaken across the country. The aim is to attain saturation of flagship schemes of the government by ensuring that the benefits of these schemes reach all targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. This Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra has reached the districts of Kathua in the northern Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The Yatra was welcomed with tremendous enthusiasm and active participation from the local communities. The IEC vans at the centre of the Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra have emerged as a dynamic tool as it continues to traverse various parts of the districts and disseminate essential information on the central government schemes. And as we wind up this edition of DD India Global, we take you to the Indian hill station of Shimla, which hosted a dog show on Thursday. The event saw participation of dogs of various breeds, which walked the ramp along with their owners. These breeds included the Huskies, the German Shepherd, the Bagels, and many more. The event attracted many spectators, including tourists. So with that, it's a wrap in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Tanvi Taneja. From all of us here in New Delhi, thank you for watching. Namaskar.